Would all please rise and join me in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Do we have any comments from the audience on non-agenda items? We have quite a healthy audience out there. You sure we don't have someone? Okay, let's move on to the agenda and consent calendar. Are there any corrections from anybody?
I'll do corrections. I'll do an adoption of the agenda and consent calendar.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you all. That passes 4-0. At this time, I would like to hold a public hearing to receive public comments and protests regarding the list of delinquent accounts. That's number one. Number two, I'll tell you what. I'll open the meeting right now and we'll go on to 2 and 3 after the meeting's over. Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Ryan Lee. I'm the Senior Customer Service Representative, and I was going to present to you the list of delinquent accounts for this year's collection along with the county property taxes. I was going to tell you a couple things about the list. So the list that you have in the board agenda packet there shows a group of 360 parcels or 352 parcels with a total delinquent balance of $455,897.48. So that number has come down, and just so you know, those customers on the list do have until August 3rd to pay that delinquent balance. So that number will continue to come down. Nobody will be added to the list, but we will be removing people from that list as they pay the bill. And then whatever's left will go to the county and be collected along with property taxes. As of today, that number has come down already from what you see there. The new total is 335 parcels, $437,463.08 in the delinquent balances. A little bit about the group of accounts we have here. About 25% of them make up 43% of that past due balance. And those accounts are ones that are typically difficult to collect on. These are going to be sewer-only accounts, multi-family accounts, motels, and some commercial accounts. So the tricky thing about these are, a lot of these are difficult for us to disconnect the service to. There are public utility codes preventing that. We've gone through this with the city before with some of our motels that we provide sewer service to, so it's, we can't easily cap off that sewer service. And the ones that we provide the water service to, the county health department has prevented us in the past from turning service off to those properties. They have monthly tenants and things like that, so there are some codes that protect them from interruption of service. So the past due portion, or the portion of that total that's made up of those accounts that are difficult to disconnect, is about 43% of the total past due balance. It's $190,000. And several of those accounts are very large. We have one account in particular where the situation is we cannot disconnect the service. Their past due debt is $48,000. So they make up a sizable portion.
Is there any other legal way to try to go after the property owners?
What we can do, and what we have done in the past, is put a lien on the land. So we do that. All that does really is protect the district in the event of them, possibly losing the property into foreclosure or something like that. We can, at least have that lien to secure the portion of the debt that belongs to us. But other than that, I don't know of any legal actions we could take to collect that. Typically, what we've done in the past is collect it with the property taxes. So tax roll seems to be effective in that, as long as they pay the property taxes and the district does get the money.
been quite some time, so there's probably a reason. They used to actually put the names beside the parcel numbers of the owners of the parcel. It's probably not legal to do that anymore, or it's just polite not to.
There's some laws under certain circumstances to prevent the district from publishing names of customers and providing that information to the public.
I remember that being a little bit of a stimulant for people when other people said, hey, I saw your name. I didn't know, I was just curious.
The front page ad full, you know.
Yeah. somehow people found out they seem to have some effect.
But I think what the district does, right, is they maybe not always in accordance with the part of the lease expensive, and since the name attaches to the land, if that property's ever sold, that gets paid off at that time. So the district will eventually get the money. It's just some of these may take a while.
Do we have standing in probate, things like that?
No, you could, the district, you could take all these small claims, but then you get a judgment, then what do? You try to go and execute on it. It's more trouble than it's worth.
I think the tax rules are pretty good.
Yes.
Okay, why don't we do this, before we make a motion, I think I can go ahead and close the public hearing. Is there any other discussion on this before I do that? And no public out there that seems to want to jump in on this anyway. So I will, at this time, close the public hearing, and do I come up to give me a motion for 2 and 3?
I don't know if I got the right numbers there.
Kelly, you do.
Yeah, I move that we approve the list of delinquent accounts and adopt resolution number 3092-18, authorizing the list of delinquent accounts to be added to the 2018-2019 El Dorado County Tax Assessor's Roll.
Do you need the amount? No. Okay.
No.
Is that good enough?
I'll second that. And once again, thank you very much. Okay, Julie, did I see you out there? I did see you out there. Let's hear all about our water system monitoring and SCADA communications upgrade.
Good afternoon. Just looking at, I was a few minutes late, so made it on time. I'm here today to request approval of two new task orders from Tahoe engineers for follow-up work on a project that came before the board about a year ago. This was our SCADA project, and it included both a communication study, PRV assessment and design for a single PRV replacement, as well as water efficiency improvements at 7 of our highest energy consuming water stations. The water efficiency piece of the puzzle is ongoing, and so the 2 requests that I'm here today to talk about are related to the communication study piece and the PRV piece. We completed the initial communication study that you might recall had intended to visit all of our 100+ field stations and do a radio communication study from each. That was sort of the worst case scenario, is that we would need to go to every site. And so the first round of investigation, they ended up only going to, I think, 42 of the worst sites, and determined based on that field study that our existing radio network is actually in pretty good shape, but we are pushing it to its limit based on the local topography, the weather, the tree coverage, and the distance of the individual sites from the wastewater treatment plant. And so they didn't feel that they needed to actually go to all 100+ sites in order to make reliable recommendations. And so we were able to save quite a bit of money on that first phase of the communication study, and they were able to produce the recommendations for all the 100+ sites for communication improvements at each. So the main recommendations were go ahead and continue to rely on our existing radio system as the backbone of our field communications, but that we would see vast improvements in reliability and in throughput if we add relay stations at 3 of our distributed tank sites, the Flagpole Tank, Keller Tank, and Angora Tank. And so in order for us to move forward with that piece of the puzzle, we need to do an analysis on the back end of how this additional data that would accompany kind of a two-pronged approach to sending information in would be handled on the back end. So that's what I'm here today to ask for, is approval to add to the scope of work for the communication study to bring in specialists to take a look at our existing SCADA system on the back end and give us advice on how to handle the data. There should not be any additional cost associated with this additional scope of work because we saved so much in the original budget. We can complete this additional effort within the original budget for the communication study. The second piece of the puzzle is the PRV improvements. We completed an assessment of how to communicate from our distributed PRVs, the vaults that are buried out in our system, back to the plant, and we will be installing the first of these systems this summer at the Pine Valley PRV. We are seeking grant funding for additional PRVs in the future, and so to have those designs shovel ready, we are asking Corollo to proceed with the design drawings for the next 3 PRVs. As part of this, we're asking that they do an assessment of a possible design of an above-ground PRV station. How would that need to be protected? What kind of insulation would it require? What would the station look like for our staff to consider? Because some of these pressure-reducing valve vaults can be in tricky traffic situations. They fill with water. They're confined space, and so we'd like them to use their resources to look at what else is out there as far as designs for these field stations. So that there is a cost associated with that additional work on the PRVs. We will be getting contract drawings for 3 stations out of it, and that would be at a price not to exceed $72,100. So, I'm requesting that you authorize staff to move forward with 2 new task orders for Corollo engineers to start.
Okay, you got any questions?
No, I think I've started. I appreciate the thoroughness of your report because I've been here long enough that I'm starting to weigh the decision that we made to not add a lot of new employees because we have blips in service, you know, that in work efforts that go away. You don't want to pay somebody for life for something that just is a temporary problem. On the other hand, the cost of the specialist is pretty great, and usually I find that our people babysit them anyway and tell them what we know, and then they tell us back what we told them. I'm going to ask questions a lot because I want to make sure, as a manager of the budget, which is really, we manage the general manager, we manage the budget, that's about it. So I want to make sure I do my job right.
Yeah, sometimes the projects that we bring to you with consultants, sometimes it is like a staff augmentation, but in this case we've got specialty trades that we're really seeking them for.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah, and there's another consideration, actually. Both of these projects that are on this agenda item are eligible for funding from El Dorado County Water Agency. And since they don't allow us to charge them for our own staff time, that makes these two projects in particular very good candidates for basically getting the work done for half price, since, well, it'll be a match sort of situation.
Well, I appreciate you being thorough in your report. It helps. Okay, thank you.
We go into a lot of detail.
And operations.
The operations committee get into a lot of
I read those reports.
details and as well as staffing, what they're doing, or comings and goings of employees.
So I don't want anybody's feelings to be hurt. I want to be consistent in the questions I ask about the meetings.
And I'll be back up here in a little while, so a little bit more gory detail, like Jim has experienced in operations committee, so.
Okay.
All right, great. Anybody follow up to a motion?
I'll move the approval of the proposal from Pro Engineering for engineering services in the amount not to exceed $73,100 to conduct a supervisory control and data acquisition needs assessment and to design pressure reducing valve improvements for 3 remote pressure reducing valve stations.
I'll second that.
And that passes 1-0. Thank you very much. Okay, storage system upgrade.
Good afternoon. Chris Kelly, IT Manager. The item in front of you today is requesting that you waive formal bidding procedures as allowed for in the current purchasing policy when an item is economically preferable to match or be compatible with other equipment presently in hand within the current SAM, and authorize the purchase of a new nimble stand to Cadence Team in the amount of $115,627.91. So a little bit of history on this purchase. Roughly around 4 years ago, we purchased the first nimble stand that we're running on today. A SAN is a device that holds all of our data. It's a pretty important piece of our backup strategy, our disaster recovery and business continuity plans. And it houses all of the district's data. So email, files, engineering projects, archive files, all that stuff is stored on one device. So being able to purchase this new nimble SAN from Cadence Team would allow us to move our current SAM down to Diamond Valley Ranch, replicate data down there on an hourly basis, and then keep up with that replication as well. So because of the limited bandwidth down there, it's tough to continue to back up data down to Diamond Valley Ranch is what we're finding, just because of the internet connectivity and just the limited bandwidth that we have down there. So SAN could do that in a much more efficient process and with less bandwidth. So I can get into the technical details if you'd like, but I don't have to right now. So other than that, Cadence Team, who supplied the SAN originally, the first nimble SAN, they have a pretty intimate knowledge of our complex network infrastructure, our security protocols, and other standard operating procedures that we do in IT. So hiring them to come in and install it would also be a benefit to the district in the sense that they know all that stuff already. We don't have to retrain somebody and potentially miss something important. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you might have.
How much storage?
So currently we're storing about 34 terabytes. So a terabyte is about 1,000 gigs. So 34,000 gigs of data right now. This nimble that's being proposed to purchase is 84 terabytes, 82 terabytes. So we're finding that as we're doing all this, especially the sewer TV trucks, we noticed that storage exploded once we started videoing all those sewer lines.
Because of the resolution.
The resolution, all the video, all that stuff. So it's not that they're mismanaging the data, it's just video takes up a lot of room.
I'm assuming you don't want to look at any cloud-based solutions.
Cloud, typically, especially for video and other, like the storage that we do would be a lot more expensive because they typically charge you per read and write on the back end, and so that would be pretty expensive.
I think the reason you're not getting a lot of questions because this is like.
You won't work on it.
I'm gonna nod wisely.
Yeah.
I like it.
IT guys.
Oh, it's our eyes for years.
Yeah, IT guys get away with murder because nobody knows what they're doing.
IT and lab right here.
Okay.
Terabytes. I remember when some guy told me in computer systems, 2 gigabytes, all the storage you will ever need.
Back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so this is a two-parter. Dwayne, you have to.
I am. Number 1, I move that we waive the formal bidding procedures as allowed for the purchasing policy when an item is economically preferable to match or be compatible with other equipment presently on hand, and the purchase is made from the supplier who supplied such equipment. And number 2, I move that we authorize the purchase of a new nimble sand to Cadence team in the amount of $115,627.91.
I'll second that.
Okay, thanks, Chris. You got a 4-0 on that. Payment claims.
I move approval of payment of claims in the amount of $2,162,515.65.
Second that.
Okay, another 4-0 vote. Do we have any standing and AD-HOC committee reports at this time?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. You all should have gotten this. We spent most of the time, probably 40 or 45 minutes on the item 3A, which is the asset management. Staff, Julie in particular, was leading the discussion. We have 2 asset management underground buried assets programs. One's for sewer and one's for water. We went over the water one, and next time we'll go to the sewer line side. So, but there's a lot of information she's going to talk about a little later, and it's important. This is what she gave us again, and I think it's in the stuff we got today. What's happening now, and then the whiter things that will be done down in the future. But it's quite extensive and very important. So we'll hear more from Julie.
Okay. Any other standing reports? How about individual board member reports? Do we have any? Okay, I have a report I'd like to discuss. Chris Cephalou and board member attendance. The board policy manual has a rule in it that says after a total of 3 consecutive absences, the board president will discuss any problems with the offending director. And most of you know, but if you don't, I'm going to go on the record that Chris came across an incredible opportunity for himself professionally. He is currently training to be an airline pilot. And that required him to miss 3 meetings in a row, which is why I had to contact him and we discussed it. Actually, I didn't contact him at that point. We really had been in conversation all along on this. He really feels bad about missing the meetings. He keeps up on what we discuss every time. He felt that it actually is, in the whole scheme of things, a pretty good time for this to happen. Because during the series of meetings he's missed, our agendas have been really fairly straightforward, more operational than anything that I would consider critical of the board, like rate increases, salary negotiation, contract negotiations. We haven't really seriously yet started the process of replacing Richard's job. So it really has been a pretty good time for this to happen. So I just wanted to stress that one is we are complying with the policy, and that I have been in communication with him. And two, he really regrets doing this, but he really thinks he can't pass up this opportunity. And I asked him how he thought scheduling would work in the future on this. And he thinks he's going to have enough flexibility. He might have to miss an occasional meeting, but he thinks the airline that he's flying for will be flexible enough that he can make a very large majority of meetings. So I thought I'd just bring everybody up to speed on this, and if any of you guys have any comments, just feel free to let me know.
A lot of people have told me, not a lot, would be more accurate, that they listen to our meetings online now. That's become, a lot of millennials are doing that. That's just they're more used to doing that kind of thing.
Sleep therapy.
So, yeah, it is for me. And I'm here. But, yeah, so a few of them do that, which is a good thing, that wasn't really something that used to be done as much. So that's something that can always be done if we miss a meeting.
The other thing that Chris and I talked about is that he feels he's done a good job of representing the ratepayers. But the ratepayers will be able to decide that real soon, because he's up for re-election. So if this is a problem, he's well aware that he might have to pay the price for it, but that's okay. Anyway, it is what it is. All right, how about the Oklahoma County Water Agency? John, anything new?
So our meeting in the month of August is actually here. So if you're so interested, everybody can attend. And that's the second Wednesday.
August 8th.
Yeah, it's not on our future meetings. We'll have a meeting prior to
Be right here in this room, so.
that. That's right. Could make it easier for.
We need to post that as
Also, it's an agenda. Oh, great. Yeah.
But not, it's 10.
9 o'clock, yes. And before we leave that topic, Ken Payne was here yesterday, he's the general manager. So John and Lynn and I met with Ken for a couple hours, and I think that it's good news in that we will bring back to you, and hopefully at the next meeting, an MOU between the district and the water agency in order to secure the funding that we were expecting and hoping to get on projects for the series, changing the process a little bit. And I think the changes will be positive because they recognize the difficulty it was to do these 1-year kind of grants when the number of our projects that will be funded are multi-year projects. Take longer than a fiscal year, and we were having to guess in March of 1 year what we were going to get done by the end of June of the next calendar year. And it was kind of difficult and constantly going back and asking for amendments and trying to roll them in the next year. And so, along with the process will be is to design like an MOU to have the boards sign it, and then part of the MOU will be basically as an appendix will be a listing of the projects that are being funded. We'll be able to show multi-year expenditures on these projects. So I think it's going to work out very well for us. And he indicated verbally that basically the projects we were hoping to fund, he was expecting to be able to fund. So that was really good to hear. Is there anything to add, John?
We're planning to bring that MOU to this board on August 2nd, and then we'll bring it to the DORADO County Board on the 8th. So you'll see that MOU soon, I believe. And yeah, I think the overall process is going to work a lot better with this multi-year implementation schedule.
maybe we're in the new fiscal year and kind of going, so can we start working on these projects yet? Or, so we'll get these projects approved in the next few weeks, and we'll be able to roll on several of the big groundwater, projects and some of our other things that you've kind of heard of, PRV. And the PRV project, a little bit of a hydro power to generate the signal to come back to the plant. Puts it in, he established like 3 categories. If it's a hydropower, it goes into its own separate category, which I think makes it much more reliably funded by the water agency. I'd like to see that. That's one of their priority 1 supports that they're looking for to support it in the county. So, well, good news.
I certainly, my time there, spent there, I want to tell you thank you for covering for me as you have, and becoming the rep. I really enjoy his style of management. I think he does a good job, and there's a lot better relationship with Colorado County because of it.
And he, quite honestly, he looks at this utility district as a model and literally expressed his desire that he wished the other West Slope agencies were as diligent as we were in meeting their deadlines, their requests for information, descriptions of projects, and everything else. So, I think by our attendance down there, I think we've developed a good working relationship that I think puts us at the front of the line to get funding and the water agency. And remember, it's really our customers' property taxes coming back to us. So it's not like it's undeserved, but it's in the past when we haven't been so diligent, things were not working smoothly, and sometimes we didn't get very much of our property tax money back. So I think things are running well down there.
Yeah, I think it's good that you got the job. It's a permanent job now. He's a good person to work with when I was on the board.
And he wanted to do that.
Yeah.
It was his,
Yeah.
something he was excited to do.
Yeah, that's great. It's a lot easier to work with than some of the past managers.
We have a stormy past. Someday I'll tell you.
Okay, I guess you're up next, Richard.
Yeah, we have a couple of staff reports. Something I wanted to mention is that back in Washington, D.C. at the Senate, there's a bill, Senate Bill 3157, which basically the bottom line is that they wanted to what they call streamline the process of, in fact, what we're going through now, which is talking to communication companies to get cell service and small cell service going. And it's the industry is trying to basically kind of sidestep the agencies having full negotiating rights over their own properties. So we've got a proposed opposition letter to that bill. That we're going to be planning and sending in tomorrow. And I think we've mentioned a couple times that we've got lengthy discussions with AT&T and Verizon or their representatives. And it's really important to maintain control because not only is there's value to our property, but there's access questions that can arise. There's them leasing out space on these towers to other companies and not sharing revenue. There's there's concerns about potential interference with our own. We've heard about our SCADA system. Some of these systems might interfere with that. We need to have in our contract protection for those things, protection for events happening down the road. And I think the attempt at streamlining the operation was an attempt at bypassing agencies having that control over their facilities. And so we think it's a bad idea. So we're sending in opposition to that. So other than that, I think we're ready for a couple of other staff reports.
Should we start with Doug? Georgia? Ivy? Whoever you want to bring up there, the whole gang's here. Most of the gang. Up to you.
They can stay there. I'll introduce them and see if I can hopefully break this. we're going to give a little report on the happenings June 28th and the June 29th that following the flake.
The ones we read about?
The ones we read about, and let you all know exactly how it transpired, how we handled the situation, and I pridefully acknowledge some of my employees, or our employees, that took care of it, did an outstanding job. That evening, well, Brennan?
You're going to stay though. That evening, Brent Cosby.
Operations received a call about 7:45 on June 28th, which was the Thursday before the 4th of July weekend, from a customer who said there was a manhole that was wet around the outside of it, and Operations Jose Ruiz and Keith Parr dispatched our standby person, which was Juan Marquez, and he got out there quickly as he could, and it was about 9:45 by the time he was able to find the person who called it in at the condos and take him down to show him the manhole that seemed to have spilled and was close to respilling. Well, Juan looked it up and he knew it was a private manhole system that drains to our mains that are down on the beach. The manhole that Juan was at that was spilling was P34. That one right there. So Juan called, communications is a problem, so Juan was able to use the gentleman's phone that was there in the condos. He called into operations. Operations called me, and I knew from past experience at 9:30 at night, there's a manhole, whether it's ours or somebody else's, that's spilling or close to spilling. We needed to respond because we have the personnel and the equipment. So I instructed ops to let Juan know to get whatever he needed personnel-wise and equipment-wise. At 10:30 that night, Matt Weiser and Jason Paul, who Jason's been here for at that point in time, had been here for 4 weeks. Matt had been here for 3 weeks, came into the plant. At first they were taking the hydro out. Juan re-instructed them to bring the hydro vacuum truck out. And they headed out there to try to solve the problem. So there'll be some pictures later on where we had to take the hydro back down a single lane road down onto the private beach right by the lake to the manhole FL66. That's where we needed to go because that run, as you can see, P34, we knew that the blockage was between P35 and P34. So we were going to, and that dumps right into our manhole at FL66. I'm standing on FL66 when I took this picture. They had to walk up the stairs with the hose from the camel. They couldn't find P37, so they had to go to P35 for the manhole up above. I'm standing on the manhole up above where we inserted the hose and shot toward those buildings to where we knew the blockage was. That was one behind the tree when I took the picture. That's where we had the surcharge. This is where we had to bring the camel down the private road. I don't know, this is where we laid our forest mains along the beach last year. And this is the gate, and this is at 11 o'clock at night, so we're pitch black and head down toward that manhole. That is our station, our small station that we turned into an electric station from a vacuum station, and that's Juan down at that manhole that we had to get to, and that's the lake on the left.
Can I ask?
Yes.
You turned it into an electric station, it's something we had previously done, or you're doing that?
We did that a year ago last May.
We converted.
Converted from vacuum to
I
electric.
just want to make sure which time frame.
This was the station that's failed during the events, and they rebuilt, and
Put a generator in
no generator on that station, although it's tied to the main station that has a generator. So they ran new force main, in addition to converting the vacuum station to electric. They ran, and Doug and his crews did this, they ran new force main and conduit back to the main station to accomplish that.
Sorry about the interruption. I just-
Oh, that's fine. What do I do, Brad?
Told you.
So at midnight that night, Juan broke the stoppage, but he had the foresight, we had our vacuum truck running, and when they broke that stoppage, it sounded like a freight train coming down the hill of sewage, and it hit that manhole is about 3 feet deep. So we had our vacuum truck running full blast, sucking, because it comes down and it makes the turn to pump to run to that electric station before it gets pumped to the main station. And so it's a 90-degree, and that amount of, we figured there was probably about 1,600 gallons coming down, and that filled that pretty rapidly. So about 1:30 that night, they called me. They finished cleaning what they could clean out there. I got a phone call. I came in about 2. Myself and Jose Ruiz went out to the spot that they had cleaned, and they had told Jose that they'd lost about 10 gallons into the lake that came out of the manhole that couldn't be captured by the vacuum truck. So I went out, took a look, came back in with Jose. We got a hold of Dan Arce from the lab. Dan responded. I took Dan out. We started taking samples. Came back in. We got some barricades with our signs that we learned from the Meskwaki spill. We had the signs made up and took barricades and some tape out. I was here at 8 o'clock, and it's my usual day off. Richard saw me and kind of had that look. And I explained to Richard what was going on. Shelley got way out in front of the press by doing a press release on what had happened, so everybody knew what was going on. And everybody here really, it was very professional. Everything went well. And I can't say enough about the crew members that handled this whole situation. They did a great job.
On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank all of you guys. I read the story when it came out. Thank you for getting ahead of that. I saw nothing but positive comments from the public because of that. And I think everybody realized that it wasn't our responsibility, but we were the ones that needed to be there to take care of it, and you guys stepped up to the plate, so that's awesome.
They did a fantastic job, and I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on what was going on and go from there.
How old is that hydrovac?
The hydrovac is one of our new ones, so it's a year and a half.
The old ones have been able to handle that?
No.
So thank you for the investment that you have approved. It clearly paid off.
Not to make light of our spill, but San Jose, what I understand, had about 33 spills today, about 30 a day. And so to run almost perfect is an incredible feat over the years. I have to credit you and your department for doing that.
These guys are on the front line every day. These are the guys taking care of all the problems and trying to keep from having any problems. So they do an outstanding job. I take great pride in acknowledging that to you.
We appreciate the quick response and the really thinking out the problem and the foresight.
I should say Juan's only been here 5 years, but Juan handled that exquisitely with what he was doing out there and handling the people, and he did a fantastic job.
It sounds like we were pretty lucky that somebody out there actually spotted the spill. Whose responsibility was that system? It should,
Those are private lines going to the condos, so that the
but who's responsible for it? And really something did happen and we weren't notified.
Right.
I mean,
The HOA, Homeowners Association, whatever. I know, the reality is, we, customer service department, and Susan was, when we talked about it in the past, Susan was looking it up. When we can find a responsible party, we will send out a ton of Carol's bill for maintaining their system. We've done that before. We basically saved people's baking, big time. And we will ask for reimbursement for our costs that we spend taking care of it.
but they should have somebody, you know, and not rely on us to respond. I mean, there's just great manholes in that system, look like,
Excuse me?
how many manholes?
There was 3 of their manholes.
Well, but in the whole area.
Oh, of the private manholes?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9.
Yeah.
So, but I'd be pointing out the fact that if they had actually had somebody, like say a plumber or somebody on call to fix problems, if they had gone up there and broken the blockage and didn't have equipment like we had up back at the bottom of the hill, that would have roared down the hill, blown the manhole cover off our manhole, and most of that water would have dumped into the lake, and since it came out of our manhole line, it would have given us a fine.
The days before the July 4th.
So,
And that's what I looked after the fact.
And
Mahan was notified, the El Dorado County Health was notified right away. Ivy did the state CWIX report on Friday, and everybody was good. And Dan tested for 4 days. That was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and we cleared the area, I believe, on Tuesday.
I just want to, again, express my appreciation for everything you do, because I get to sleep at night, and you guys get to work, and I appreciate that. I want to also make sure that, you know, Doug and I get a big pat on the back, in particularly having the resources, having the right protocols, having the right procedures, and also hiring 2 guys with less than a month on the job who can go out there and help Juan at 5 years on the job get this thing done and make this happen. That, in my mind, that is extremely rare and incredible. And again, I really appreciate the work that y'all are doing.
Thank you. I don't want to leave out operations. Jose Ruiz, the operations supervisor in Keith Parr operations, they took copious notes and stayed on top of it and kept me informed that evening until I ended up making sure what was going on. So, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, Melanie, you got something for us real quick?
I do. We have our mandatory ethics training.
Well, it's a good thing I feel myself lapsing.
Also, we're always behaviors, I guess, we do that. Thursday, September 20th, 11:30 to 1:30 here in the boardroom, ready for the September board meeting. So we'll provide lunch for everybody, and we'll be done by Ryan Hyatt, free of charge, right now. It's been very great to provide this training for us. It'll also be for managers of the district, so it'll be a good crowd.
You know the drill. Give us an email warning or whatever.
Exactly.
What time of day did you say?
11:30 in the morning to 1:30, and then we'll have half hour before the board meeting starts. To give us time to set up all the equipment and get the food out. So that is on Thursday, September 20th. Right here in the board room. And I'm sending out a notice to everybody to put on your Outlook calendar to block this out.
All right, looks like we also have something about our buried assets.
Back. Is everybody comfortable? Because I've got a few slides to go through. I will try and keep it interesting.
I don't like it starting out that way. That's not what I want to hear.
I'll try to keep it interesting. I will try not to talk too fast because I have a habit of when I feel like I'm dragging on, just talking faster to fit it all in. So I wanted to come talk to you today about some asset management programs that the engineering staff has been working on for about the last year, kind of in the background to help us prepare for the upcoming Prop 218. Because most of these efforts that we've been working on has been largely completed by our staff, we haven't been coming to you on a periodic basis asking for money, and so you may not be aware of all that we're doing to help prepare. So today I'm going to focus just on the water system buried assets. I think that everybody is aware that we're also simultaneously working on asset management programs for our buried assets in our sewer system, and I'll come back, as Jim mentioned, at a later date to bring us up to speed on where we stand with those. So this slide basically has a list of all of the programs that we have conceived for managing our assets moving forward on the water system, all the buried assets. So I'm talking about pipes and valves and pressure reducing valves. And on this list, similar to the table that is at the back of the packet that I provided to you, which goes into a lot more detail on all of these, I have tried to highlight on this slide differences in the status of the various programs. So the ones that are listed on here in white, we have a concept but haven't really started putting any effort into them in a systematic way. The ones that are in green, we have begun working on, but they are relatively self-explanatory, or you've heard of them before. And the ones in yellow are the 5 that I want to go into a little more detail with you today. So the first one I want to talk about is the water loss tracking program. The figure on the right is sort of our first overview of how a water loss tracking program might be laid out. And what you see there is a bunch of colored areas that are how we might cluster our customers within our zones and monitor the water going into each of those colored areas through flow meters at our wells, our pump stations, our pressure reducing valves, and then compare the water being delivered to that area against the AMI data, the customer meter data that we're now collecting wirelessly. And the idea is every couple of weeks we would look at the cumulative delivery to the area and compare that to the cumulative consumption. And the goal here is that we would see leaks coming up before they've surfaced. So in a lot of cases, our leaks don't surface because of the granular nature of our materials, and so it would help us steer the underground repair water crew in the right direction in their leak response efforts. It would also help us with reporting to the state on upcoming regulations regarding water losses from our system. And the benefit of this program is that it really leverages all those 14,000 customer water meters that we're putting in the ground. It allows us to use that technology in a very efficient way to inform our staff about what's going on. So one of the reasons why I'm here today specifically is because in August I plan to bring you a request for consulting fees to help us break our main zone into these district metered areas, because there are 7,000 customers there, and that's too many customers for us to track in a usable way. So we need to figure out a way to break that zone into smaller pieces and monitor the flows through the zone. And that'll involve designing some stations that would be inserted on our water mains, so that we can see where the water is flowing once they leave the wells. So that will be the first of the efforts with this water asset management program that we're seeking outside help. And the reason why we want our consultant to help us with this is because it requires extensive use of our water model. And so we've got Carollo engineers on board doing some of these sort of one-off, very specific projects for us using that water model. The next one I want to talk about is the pressure management program. The purpose of pressure management is basically to help us extend the life of our assets. There's been some studies done showing that a 1% drop in pressure can result in 0.2 years of life extension. So in bigger numbers, if you are able to drop the pressure in the zone by half, you could extend the life of that pipe by 20 years. And so we see a lot of potential because we have so many zones within our system that are pressure regulated zones. And so we're working right now with the Danish Water Technology Alliance. They're giving us some free consulting on how to set up a pressure management pilot study. And we are collecting data right now in our not linear zone to inform the installation of a pressure management system in a small area that has about 200 customers in it. And I expect that we will start seeing information back from that area in about September. The third one I wanted to bring you up to speed on is our leak reporting. All the dots on this figure are historic leaks from the last 10 years. And there's just shy of 2,000 dots on that figure. So basically every work order that has been generated when a leak is brought to our attention that we go out and address is represented by a dot on this map. And so we want to be able to use this information to establish some criteria for assessing the condition of individual buried pipelines. And to be able to do that reliably, we're working with the water crew to improve the way that they collect data, teaching them what information is actually important for the assessment. And Brent's been doing a great job of bringing them up to speed, helping them understand how we're using the information. And Brent and Jim have been working together to develop these maps and help us figure out what it all means. The fourth one here, this is the Waterline Monitoring Priorities Program, and this program is very similar to the program that we have developed for the gravity sewer system, and I came and talked to you guys about this in the springtime. This is where we are looking at the various characteristics of our mains that either contribute to the likelihood that it's going to fail or increase the consequences if a line were to fail. And so we go through every pipe in the system and we are assigning scores for all these various criteria and coming up with sort of an overall ranking of all the water mains in the system so that we can have a better picture of where we should be spending our resources in either monitoring those mains more actively or increasing their priority on the replacement plan. This particular figure is kind of interesting. It's one that we worked with our consultants, Carollo engineers, to develop out of the water model just recently. This is actually showing you system pressures. You'll see some areas on here that either are red or black. Those areas have pressures in excess of our level of service recommendation, which is a max system pressure of 120. And this is the average pressure for the line on the max day of usage. So the average pressure on a normal day would actually be higher than what is shown on this graph. So, you know, these areas, the black one in kind of the bottom left of the figure, that was already identified when we went through the water system optimization plan, and there is a project on the CIP already to install pressure reducing valves to bring the pressure down in that area. What was new to us when we created this graph is the red area to the east there. That is average pressure of 120 to 140 pounds when we're ideally serving somewhere between 40 and 80 pounds. And so very high pressure, that area was a surprise to me, so now it gives us something to think about as far as, you know, is there another potential project in the future to help us bring this pressure down and extend the life of those lines. Yes?
What would be considered too low of a pressure?
So our mandated minimum is 20 pounds at the main. And so you would be looking for the purple on the graph, and I think you only have a couple of lines in the whole system that are showing like that, but there's generally no services on those lines. That'll be like a tank feed line that's up above all of the services. The Danish group that we've been working with, they target 40 pounds for their average water pressure on their system. So they keep theirs quite low. They don't have the fire demands that we do. They don't rely on gravity tanks in the same way. They have pressurized systems. And so they have different challenges than we do, but they're also very flat. So. So the last program that I wanted to talk to you about is kind of the culmination of all the others, and that is the waterline rehabilitation and replacement program. John has been working with Steve Caswell and our consultants to identify hydraulic deficiencies within the system and hydrant spacing deficiencies within the system, and now we're at the point where we're taking that information, bringing it back into the plans that our staff had developed, water line upsizing program, our other hydrant installation lists, and bringing that all together into defined project areas. And so this program will be ongoing as we identify new projects out of our condition assessments and all these other programs. And this will ultimately be what you see as we turn it into capital improvement program. So, if you have any more questions, I'd be happy to.
Not a question, but just a comment. I really like what you're doing here. I think being proactive is the way to go, because I think most, you know, up until we've had technologies like this, it was always reactive, right? I mean, you might have done proactive because you knew a certain thing was undersized or whatever, but it's just a good way for us to find out what we're looking at down the road.
Well, a lot of our programs thus far have been, especially on the water side, have been directed specifically towards system deficiencies. You know, where we're not getting enough flow, that kind of thing, and hasn't been looking comprehensively at system condition and mortality of the pipes. And so this is us developing those tools that will allow us to start to consider those issues as well. And there's a lot of work to be done in here, and we are just getting started. But I think it's a good direction.
I'm just wondering if it is, as a community, you know, we've got Lucas and McKee's and Lakeside Mutual, which only serve about 2,500 services, I think. Would it be beneficial for them to maybe go in on some of these when we have a consultant to add to it? They probably get something done cheaper than they could if they went out on their own. It would benefit them, and it'd benefit us in the long run too. If we ever wind up with those districts.
I think that's a great idea, and we have started opening those doors for them in, gosh, what month was that? I had a terrible flu, and so I had to miss the meeting. But the Danish Water Technology Alliance came up, and we hosted a meeting down at AD-HOC and invited Lukens and the Keys and Lakeside. And I think Lukens and the Keys both sent folks to the meeting, did they?
He's definitely there. Oh, yeah.
Okay. But whether the gentleman from the Keys was able to make it, I'm not positive. Yes. He was,
Yeah, Rick and Jen.
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it was that sort of opportunity, basically just sharing with them what it is we're working with the Danish folks on, getting them thinking about similar things and bringing them into kind of a partnership. That was the intent of that, so.
Okay, so what is it with this Danish group?
So,
How did they get involved?
You want the story?
Well, yeah, and you said it was free.
Yes.
Yeah, so what's up with this?
Yeah,
I'm a
so-
skeptical of free things.
It's actually kind of crazy. So, we're a member of a group called the Technology Approval Group that Steve and I have been attending meetings. There's one wastewater meeting 3 times a year and one water meeting 3 times a year, where we get introduced to new technologies within the sector. It's a group that's trying to build bridges between manufacturers and owners. And so one of those meetings, a representative of the Danish government came to the meeting because that is her job. She has been assigned to the state of California for, I think she is just about to end a 4-year position where all she's doing is building bridges with California water agencies. And so they host these trips to Denmark to see what it is they're doing on their system, both on the water side and the wastewater side, and then they're trying to build partnerships. And so she has really taken the lead, Pia Jakobsen, she's taken the lead on this pilot project, asking us for the information that she needs, bringing together the manufacturers that work on these systems, distributing that all, and helping us devise a plan. And so it's a really fortunate relationship because AD-HOC is Danish, the manufacturing company that has the factory in Minden. And so for us, it's a really great location because they're basically giving us free consulting.
Well, that's what I'm asking. What's in it for them?
Yeah, she's a member of basically their Department of State. So she's an engineer.
Well, and the fact that you said she was a California representative, so that means they've got them like all over the country?
They have one in Chicago, and they just opened one in Texas. And
It's also Grundfos, a major pump manufacturer, big competitor to Flight and other agencies.
So kind of a person.
So I think there is a technology development and get these manufacturers out into other markets. I suspect that is a big part
I
of
think it's
the
a big
drive.
piece of it.
Yeah.
You know, she's really back there pushing them to provide free services to us so that we get to know their names. Kamstrup is the Danish water meter manufacturer. So I've met their reps. You said Grundfos. There's Danfoss that does the electrical equipment.
Yeah, that's ADK. That's the factory.
Hydrant selection, ADK, 2 on.
Okay.
It has.
So they fly with the radars, they're everywhere.
And for full
Geez, I thought it was just Russian.
For full disclosure, Julie was in Denmark and was traveling there on a personal trip, and they had an opportunity to join one of these tours. We paid for her to, I think,
Change my airfare.
to change her airfare, not to pay for her airfare, but to change the dates on it in order for her to attend that. So she has gone to Copenhagen and toured their facilities mostly on her dime, so.
And it was really great because that trip, there were 10 of us from California water agencies, including representatives from East Bay Med, SFPUC, San Diego County, LADWP, Contra Costa Water District, as well as a handful of us that were from small water utilities. All, we traveled together basically for a week. And so developing those relationships and being able to use their knowledge, because they have such deeper pockets and have been trying so many more things, was really insightful. So that's actually where a lot of this originated, was from those conversations, and then helping me personally to kind of like get my head around the issues and then bring it back to our staff and bring us together to figure out what works right for us.
It's just a more localized question. Once in a while, I have customers say, my water pressure is too low. Who do I talk to in the district? And then most of the time I refer them back to the size of their own line that might connect to us, or I tell them they could have a leak. Is some of that being examined too? And like on Margaret Avenue, actually, Margaret Avenue has me. I was trying to find it here. So, who do I need to talk to?
Margaret's in the wire.
Yeah, avoid these three.
They have a pressure issue. Them calling customer service here at the desk is a great place to start, just as a central location. But really, our first step in evaluating that is got to be to contact Tony and the underground repair water crew. They can go out and take a look at it and see what's going on. And the customer service folks also know where we're doing construction projects. And so there's a possibility, this happens periodically, that we have done a construction project and sanded up somebody's line. If it's part of a construction project or near a construction project, they'll send them to the engineering group and the inspectors responsible for the project. But if it's not part of that, starting with our underground repair water folks is the right thing for customer service to send them to, because they can go out and put a meter on a hydrant and see what the meter, what's the pressure out in the street. They can also put a pressure meter on their hose bib and find out what the pressure is at the house with the water running. Oftentimes, somebody's line is sanded up, or there's some other problem on their end of the system that's not related to what we have going on. It could well be that there's an issue with a 2-inch water main going to their front, serving that area. Our underground repair water crews, they also know all that information. They have the grids, they have the history with it, they know where low pressure systems are in the area, and they'll work with that customer to figure out what the problem is.
Okay.
An interesting one that we just discovered with some of the new builds, and this could also be true on older construction, is that a lot of these houses are getting PRVs on their pressure reducing valves on their service line from the street, even if they don't really need them. So it could be that just needs to be adjusted.
Yeah, I think in the Sacramento area, that's part of their local building code, is a requirement to do that. So if you get a builder from outside of the Tahoe area, in an area where their local building codes require those PRVs, they'll just install them without thinking about it.
I see. Okay.
All right, very good. Thank you.
I think I'm going to jump up next before you, if you don't mind, since mine hopefully will be really
You
short.
guys are on my list.
Well, this is very brief. This is just a handout that has the handout we are planning to give to the folks back in DC. We wanted you to have that, so in case in the event that you got some questions about either why we're going to DC, and by that I mean Dwayne and I going back on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. We are talking primarily about the fire partnership funding and the PCE plume in the South Y area. And so, again, these are, to some extent, our talking points, as well as a handoff that we're going to give to the folks back in DC. We wanted to make sure you had that in the event that you had any questions or someone contacted you and had questions.
you're going to be meeting with?
We really got everything set up with everybody. So both the California and the Nevada delegation. So Feinstein's office, we're still nailing down, the last agenda I saw, still nailing down exactly who we're meeting with, but more than likely her chief of staff, Alexa Siegel, I believe, and then Chris Tudor and the McClintock staff, and now I'm going to lose the names, but we're also meeting with Senator Harris's staff, Amadeus and Heller, as well as Cortez Masto. So we're hitting all of the Tahoe representatives, particularly on the fire side. We'll be talking about with the Nevada folks, we'll talk about the fire partnership pretty much exclusively and the funding associated with that. And then with the California delegation will be the fire partnership, but also this PCE issue. And what we're really focused on in the PCE issue is not where we have been historically and the issues we have with the past, but it is what are we going to do in the future? Who is going to pay to clean this up? We don't think it should be ratepayers, and we need either the state or federal government to bring money to bear to clean up this mess that is closing wells in our community. We're not going to
service for the.
We're not going to EPA at this point. When we talk to EPA, we're going to start with Region 6 here in California would be the intent. It's my understanding from Eric, he has, they've indicated that we should start with the legislators and not go to EPA back there yet. But we should start here at the region before talking to those folks. I expect in February, when we go back for the bigger trip, the longer week-long trip, we may well be there. And after we've initiated conversations with the Region 6 folks.
Region 9.
9, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. Are there any questions about any of this? If you have any questions going forward, or if anybody in the public or anybody that you know works at Lahontan raises a question about this, please let us know. We have not briefed Lahontan, but we have let Lahontan staff know associated with the PCE issue that we are going back there. We are talking about the PCE issue, so they're aware that this is on the horizon as a courtesy to bring them up to speed that we're having these conversations so they don't get calls out of the blue with no idea where it came from. We've told them we're not there to throw them under the bus. We're there to look for proactive solutions and funding going forward for the community. That's all I've got.
And last but not least,
I have no presentation, I have no handouts.
What are we paying for?
Just wanted to give you a quick heads up. I think we mentioned before, we started looking at the district's surface water rights in the Tahoe Basin. Since those are now unfrozen since TROA was implemented, and the State Water Resources Control Board has now started looking at the old petitions, old applications that have been basically sitting there since the 70s to make sure they will eventually comply. Any water delivered that those are diverted will be in conformance with the allocations in the Settlement Act. So we have gathered documentations through the district from the State Water Resources Control Board. We have pulled some of our own documents. We did some water rights work for the district back in the late 90s, and we had records there from the State Water Resources Control Board. We're going through those. We have, in developing our framework on how to approach this, we put together a work plan that staff is now reviewing. And what I'd like to do is agendize this at the next board meeting for a little bit more in-depth discussion of our approach to moving through the district's current change petitions and applications that you have pending before the state board. Because you had several via water companies that the district had previously acquired. And so those have been sitting there. Basically, the state board had not been acting on anything until TROA was complete, but TROA was the precondition to the implementation of the allocations underneath the Settlement Act. So we will give you a little bit more in-depth view of what we're looking at, how we're going to approach this, the decision-making process, and looking at issues and opportunities on what we might be able to do with those change petitions and applications for the district service water rates.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? I guess that's it. You can see the past and future meetings on that, and if there's nothing else,